Welcome, everyone, to another edition of SCRC's Let's Talk Caregiving. I'm your host, Roberto Velasquez, President and CEO of Southern Caregiver Resource Center, and I'm here, as always, with my co-host, Martha Rañón, our Executive Vice President. Hi, Marta.
Hey, Roberto.
Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Elizabeth Saunders, who's joining our podcast. Elizabeth was a caregiver to her mother who had dementia and recently passed away, so sorry to hear. As a caregiver, Elizabeth was actually what we call a long-distance caregiver, and she was traveling from New York to San Diego to help with her mom. Elizabeth, on outside of being a caregiver, of course, we always forget, we're caregivers and that's how we identify, but we actually have an identity outside of being a caregiver. Elizabeth is also a singer, actor, and performer, and has been a great supporter of the work we do here at SCRC. We're so happy to have you here joining us today, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
And I'm really excited because, we talk about caregiving, and of course, we're all very familiar with a lot of the caregiving responsibilities and duties and the tasks and how overwhelming and everything. But then when you add a monkey wrench to it, when you add the long distance, when you add the fact that you're not there, but you're still responsible in many ways, or feel that you need to help in many ways, it just makes it a little more challenging. And I'd like us to share with our audience, our listeners, some of that experience that we've had. And I know, Martha, you've had that experience as well.
I certainly have. And Elizabeth, first of all, our condolences to you and your family for the passing of your mom. I know that's not an easy thing to do. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that, but nothing really prepares you for that, even if you know that it's coming. But I wanted to really explore your experience of having to be a bi-coastal caregiver, because that is, talk about a whole different time zone and having to take a plane to get to places. So I wanted to see if you can talk to our audience about how that experience came to be for you.
Well, I did not fly repeatedly back and forth. I flew out because mom had come under hospice care, and the doctors were suspected that she had days to weeks. And my sisters who live here in San Diego did not feel that they could be with her, could care for her at the house that we grew up in. And it was very important to me that mom was able to be home at that time, and she wanted to be home. And so 3 days later, after we found out about that circumstance for mom, I got on a plane and flew home, thinking I'd be here for maybe a couple of months, and that did not turn out to be the case. The short version here is that it became a year and a half, and I was punting day by day by day with the uncertainty of any number of things with regard to mom's condition, and also with regard to how long I would be here. So I sort of spent a solid year and a half in sort of on a threshold between two places, living here at home in San Diego, but not really knowing when everything would come to a stop.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. You say, it extended a much longer period than the original prognosis way. And that often happens when people go on hospice. It's a phenomenon in hospice, especially with people with dementia and Alzheimer's. And I don't know what it is. It could be the special care, the treatment, the more attention that they're getting. But the person often, and they see this a lot, thrives. And that 6-month threshold gets expanded. And then there's all this hope and all this, oh, well, mom's getting better and dad's getting better. But of course, they are at the end of the disease
Mm-hmm.
process. So it's
Mm-hmm.
inevitable, and of course, it's inevitable for all of us. We're all going to die someday. I don't want to bring gloom and gloom to the listeners here, but it's
That's,
a
that's
reality.
the truth.
But
Mhm.
yeah, that can happen, and it does change things. Like you said, you were here temporarily with your mindset. Okay, we're going to make things comfortable, 2 months, something like that, and then all of a sudden you're here for an extended period of time, and your whole life is different now because now you're involved in the caregiving.
Elizabeth, I wanted to hear from you how you went about to mentally prepare for that transition, because
Mhm.
I know those of us who have been in caregivers and have been in this position, sometimes logically we know that's the next step and we need to do all the paperwork and all the things that need to happen and all the decision making. But I think emotionally, mentally, it just takes a whole lot of different kind of energy. So I just wanted to hear from
Mhm.
you how you prepare for that, and how you, I mean, that's a long time, a year, it's very
Yeah, it
exhausting,
really
I
is.
can't
It was a
imagine
year
how
and a half.
you,
Yeah.
a year and a half, I mean, that is
Yeah.
a long
Yeah.
time to be in this transitional
And this,
period.
yes. Yes, yes, it really is. I've realized, sort of reflecting on, as I was reflecting during that period, and now since then, reflecting on the things that sort of buoyed me and strengthened me and helped me just sort of stay the course. Um, One thing that I would like to share, and I share it not so much to share too much about myself, but because I hope it'll make other people listening maybe think about what skills they've developed in their lives that they might not think apply, but that actually do. So yeah, I'm, like you said, I'm a singer, I'm an actor, I'm also a voice teacher. I'm a private voice teacher and have been for decades. And I also am an acting coach and like that with some of my singing students. And I'm the current president of the New York Singing Teachers Association. And I had to write a couple of months in, after getting here, I had to write for our quarterly journal. I had to write my president's letter. And I thought, how can I write a president's letter? What in the world will I say? I'm thinking about mom. I'm not thinking about writing and I pulled up a few thoughts from that president's letter so that I could sort of share them with you here, because they helped a lot. And there are some other things that I grew up with, stuff that I learned from a book my dad gave me when I was a kid, and things like that I realized were really integral to what sustained me and strengthened me and helped me not break under the burden, you know. So a few things I wrote in my president's letter for that issue of Voice Prints. I said, so many singers and teachers live through long periods, if not entire lives, when family members or others think that our work is of rather dubious value, or that the skills we are endeavoring to develop and share with others have little to no gritty real life application. And that my experience here with mom has been exactly the opposite. Um, I have a short list of things, but the majority, it really encompassed the majority of circumstances each day with my mom. And so the effect of these few things that I'll share is really quite all encompassing. Um, Decades of mining my heart and emotions to connect and bring depth and humanity to roles has given me an ability to stay present with mom without fear or avoidance of painful feelings. Sort of a willingness to sit inside of emotion and difficulty really set me up very well for this circumstance with mom. Also, with someone with dementia, decades of experience studying and rehearsing the same lines or operatic libretto until they're embedded in my mind and spirit, and then continuing ever more and more, focusing on my scene partner. This is something you do as an actor, focusing on my scene partner, learning to be present in the moment, because every single moment is new, has made me take in stride the circumstances of mom repeating the same conversations, the same observations about, say, the backyard, as we sit and observe nature chirping, hopping, scurrying in front of us for hours on end together. Every time it comes up for her, every time it comes up in her is a new moment. And there's always something new to mine in that moment for both of us. Because truly, every moment is new, whether we have dementia or not, you know. And then also I said decades of teaching, of helping students fumble their way into healthy and beautiful sound production as singers, and assisting some students with extremely stubborn barriers to vocal transformation has made second nature for me. The act of giving mom the space and time that she needs without pressure or impatience, to simply observe and be present with her as she is, standing at the ready to protect her from harming herself if necessary, but giving her room to figure out how to use her muscles, say, to the best of their ability, so that we can hopefully delay and shorten the length of time she may end up bedridden. And then at the end of the letter, I said, I'm a firm believer that the more exposure we have to not just the joys, but the painful difficulties that can be part of one's human experience, the more we can be there for our students and the more we have to bring to our artistry and to encourage others to bring to theirs. So there's great value in sharing them with each other, both as people and as artists. I am of a philosophy that if we try to run from the painful aspects of life, we lose a part of our humanity, and we're simply not able to be there compassionately for other people in ways that I think are deeply needed. So
I think what you said, Elizabeth, is so resonating with me right now, because that sitting in the discomfort, sitting with adversity is so truly important, because then it does make you a little bit more introspective and reflective on what's happening. And thus you're able to, like you say, mind your heart, mind your emotions, so that you're able to deal with those challenges. And we know so many people who are avoidant, right? They don't like conflict. They want to avoid. Don't talk about this. Let's not even face the tragedy that we are facing. And it doesn't help anything, because down the line, it resurfaces, right? You didn't process this. It's still a trauma that has been unresolved. And so I'm so glad that you say that, because I think giving ourselves as caregivers that space to be compassionate with ourselves. You know, this moment makes me sad. I don't want to see my fill in the blank, my mom, my aunt, my grandmother in this pain. I wish I could take it away, but I can't. This is what her end of life is looking like. I'm uncomfortable, but what can I do to make it a little bit better for her within what I am able to do? And that's difficult to realize when you are in that moment. But I really appreciate you having said that, because I think for any of our listeners who are maybe finding themselves in this situation, or maybe are anticipating being in that situation in some short future, I think this might be very helpful.
I hope so.
Well, and thank you so much, Martha, for adding to it. You know, I think, Elizabeth, you might want to add the title of poet under your accomplishments over your career. I didn't want to interrupt because it was just so poetic what you were saying, and it was so real and impactful. But when I think about long distance caregiving, I also think about long distance being pretty much anywhere if you live an hour or more away from that individual. So you could be a long distance caregiver and be in North County or in South Bay, and your mom lives in North County, or vice versa. And it makes it, from the standpoint of tasks or being a caregiver, it just brings different challenges, because some people as caregivers, they feel like they're not as involved, because they're not doing the lifting, the carrying, the feeding, the things of that nature. But I think it's really important for people to know that they're valued as caregivers, even if they're not in the home with that individual, that they are providing that emotional support, that they are helping the caregiver that's there, maybe the sister, brother who's there on a regular basis, help them sort through their emotions, to that discomfort that you're talking about, Martha. All of those things, those phone calls every once in a while that come in and say, how are you doing? That's really important.
You know, Elizabeth, I used to have, when I was in that caregiving situation, my brother lived out of town and he lived in Washington, D.C. So from San Diego to Washington, D.C., it's pretty far away. And I remember him saying, "How can I help? How can I help? What can I do?" And I said, "You know what? Let me just call you and vent. Let me just call you and complain and cry and laugh or make me laugh. Just be that outlet because sometimes that's what we need as caregivers. I cannot imagine hopping on a plane across the country knowing that you're going to this experience of hospice or that your loved one is about to start this new chapter in their life, and so having that is so important.
Yes, thank you, Martha. I also wanted to ask Elizabeth in her recent experience, as a caregiver, especially a long distance caregiver, and I know you came and stayed here in San Diego for a while, with your mom, but a lot of times some tips include for the long distance caregivers, plan some activities, plan some fun things, plan some things outside of being a caregiver. And I'm curious, with your background and everything, did you do some fun things with your mom?
Oh my goodness, yes. After she was released from hospice, it's about 6 months in, a little over 6 months in. We decided, okay. I thought, and my husband, he was originally planning to fly out from the east, and he decided that since I didn't have a car out here to use, he would drive instead. So he drove out one of the cars. He's a real paladin. He drove out one of the cars so that I'd have a car here with mom. And we'd mask up. I got her to the fair. I got mom to Seaport Village. I'd wheel her around. She was in a wheelchair, got her to Seaport Village, got her to the gem show. I wanted to do everything possible to bring her as much delight at this point. That's really my entire time here was geared towards bringing her as much delight. So even though I was caring for her, when I would aim to bring her delight, it brought me delight. And that sort of helped feed the situation, feed emotionally, how I was.
I totally relate to you, Elizabeth. I'm hoping that other caregivers can also find that similarity in your story, because I remember also with my aunt who was also went through hospice, and that's who I cared for. Towards the end, we try to do very similar experiences because I figured, well, maybe whatever she wants to experience, I can at least give her that. Now I'm so glad that we did, because I have those memories, and they were so simple. They were like, I want some fries from McDonald's, and coffee or
Yeah.
pancakes,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, let's go, let's do it.
That's right. Mom wanted chocolate cream pie one night. I was like, okay, Marie Callender's is delivering a chocolate cream pie. That's happening, yeah. Or essential oils that she loved when things were really
Yes.
imminent.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything,
And
just
even those
anything.
simple things, like you say, like even putting lotion on the hands and sitting there and having a conversation, and that massage actually feels good for them and it feels good for you. You're
Mhm.
rubbing lotion on somebody and you're getting that
Yep.
kind of stimulation as well. These are some I appreciate you sharing so much about your time as a family caregiver. And I know that it doesn't normally just end at that moment, because there's so much loss that does happen while that individual's alive and then afterwards as well. And sometimes it's even a challenge to get to re-identify who you are outside of being a caregiver. I do want to say that you touched on so many different things as far as being, the emotion of it, the challenges, the feeling of uncomfort, discomfort, I should say. um,
Mhm.
and I want people to know that it's really important to reach out for help. And we have incredibly talented uh, uh, expert clinical team here at Southern Caregiver Resource Center that can really provide that support guidance, even help assess things that your needs, things that you didn't even know about. So I really encourage people to reach out to Southern Caregiver Resource Center as soon as they know they're a caregiver, or just if they're not even certain whether they're caregivers or not, if they're just caring or concerned about somebody, reach out for some help. Well, that's all the time we have left for this edition of Let's Talk Caregiving. To hear more of our podcast, follow us on your favorite podcasting platform or visit our website at scrc.care. I want to thank Martha for co-hosting another important discussion, our guest Elizabeth Saunders, and our audience for tuning in. If you're providing support to a loved one, you don't have to do this alone. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. To connect to our programs and services, visit our website at scrc.care or call us at 1-800-827-1008. If you live outside of San Diego and Imperial counties, you can go and visit caregivercalifornia.org and connect to one of the 11 caregiver resource centers in the state of California that will help you in your area. And remember, SCRC is here for you, caring for those who care for others. Thank you.